A brooding overhang of storm clouds consumed the sky, a smear of bruised purple and slate gray. Within the oppressive cloud banks, bolts of energy arced like skeletal serpents, heralding an imminent deluge. The air was heavy, still, the silence so profound it felt as though the world itself was holding its breath. A column of teenagers in worn hiking gear trudged along a precarious trail etched into the granite face of the mountain. They kept their heads down, their movements desperate, as if pursued by some unseen terror, not daring to spare a single glance behind them. Murmurs of urgency rippled through the group. They were told the window was closing, that there were only moments left. Anxiety glistened on their faces, mingling with the sweat of exertion. They pushed their pace, trying to reach the end of the winding path. But the trail seemed to mock them, stretching into an unforgiving infinity between towering rock walls that scraped the bellies of the clouds. Some of the younger aspirants, their stamina depleted, stumbled and fell, but most clenched their jaws and forced their weary legs onward. A deafening crack tore through the silence. A pillar of raw electricity, thick as an old-growth tree, slammed into the path just ahead of the lead group, blasting a smoking crater into the solid rock. The thunder that followed was a physical blow, shaking the very foundations of the mountain. The brilliant, strobing light illuminated a tall youth at the front, his body trembling violently. He screamed that he was done, that he couldn't go on. He didn't care about the prize, not if it meant being vaporized by a lightning strike. He wanted out. Another echoed his sentiment, followed by another. As each one declared their withdrawal, their bodies dissolved in a soft shimmer of silver light, vanishing from the trail. The remaining few pressed forward without a word. The Argent Academy, the most exclusive institution of its kind in the nation, opened its gates only once a decade, offering a handful of places to candidates under 15 from across the country. Those who could pass its 3 grueling trials were granted an opportunity beyond imagining. A chance to step onto a higher plane of existence, to become one of the elite conduits revered by the outside world. The first 2 trials were challenging but safe. This final test, the gauntlet, was different. It claimed lives every single cycle. The atmospheric energy was real, and a direct hit on an unprotected mortal body was fatal. Worse, the gauntlet was timed. Exceed the limit and it was an automatic failure. Only a quarter of an hour remained. 31 aspirants were left on the path, still more than a mile from their destination, while the storm overhead grew into a cataclysmic frenzy. Each discharge was a world-shattering event, powerful enough to cleave the mountain in 2. A small girl in the middle of the pack, her face bleached with terror, timidly questioned the boy ahead of her, asking if perhaps they should quit. This lightning would kill them. The boy, about 14, turned to face her. He wasn't classically handsome, but an intense magnetism radiated from him. His eyes held a sharp, calculating glint as he surveyed the girl with a peculiar expression. Then, a sudden, disarming smile broke across his face. He told Mia she was too fearful. He assured her they would both make it, that they just needed to hold on to his hand and keep moving. The girl seemed about to protest, but the unwavering certainty in his eyes silenced her. She swallowed her fears and nodded. As they moved forward, another massive bolt of lightning roared from the heavens, this one aimed directly at the boy. The girl shrieked, a tremor of pure terror shaking her small frame. Yet, in that instant, some primal courage surged within her. She lunged forward, stretching her arms out to shield the boy, screaming for him to be careful. She was a dozen yards from the point of impact, a distance she couldn't possibly cover, but she didn't see that. The boy she was trying to protect, Caleb, felt the corner of his mouth twitch upward in a look of grim satisfaction. His eyes were alight with a strange fusion of triumph and anticipation, as if a long-held plan was finally coming to fruition. However, just as the bolt was about to incinerate the girl, a blade of pure, silver energy materialized from the air. The incisive slash of power collided with the raw electrical fury, erupting in a shower of incandescent sparks. The silver blade was unyielding, piercing through the heart of the lightning strike. A shockwave of emerald green energy radiated outward, knocking every aspirant on the path to the ground as the lightning itself vanished into nothingness. 31 pairs of eyes stared wide in utter disbelief at the figure who had appeared in the turbulent air. Suspended between the 1,000-foot cliffs, a man clad in a tailored white coat with wide sleeves stood amidst the raging storm, looking down with detached indifference at the crumpled forms of the trial takers. He had sculpted features, with long brows over deep-set, intelligent eyes, a straight nose, and finely drawn lips. The corners of his eyes tilted up slightly, giving his face an almost ethereal quality that made the aspirants forget how to breathe. His dark hair whipped about in the non-existent wind, framed by the chaos of the storm behind him. He seemed utterly unconcerned, using his own body as a shield against the thousands of volts of energy, his gaze calmly sweeping over the children below. His presence was one of absolute grace and power, a beauty so profound it was almost intimidating. Another bolt of lightning struck, this one even more ferocious than the last. He simply raised his hand, and the silver blade of energy reappeared, shattering the menacing strike into a million fading embers. The blade danced in the air, then shrank, transforming into a sliver of light that dove toward the man's brow, leaving a faint, shimmering pattern on his skin before it disappeared. Silence descended upon the gauntlet once more. The time for the trial had long since passed, but that thought occurred to no one. Moments later, 3 other figures in the Academy's white uniforms flew to the scene. Upon seeing the man, they bowed their heads respectfully, addressing him as Senior Sterling. Julian Sterling gave a slight nod to the 3 instructors. He then turned his gaze back to the children on the path. His eyes scanned the group and quickly settled on the pair who looked like siblings. One of the instructors beside him immediately began to report in a low voice. He identified the boy as Caleb Thorne, 14, with baseline potential. The girl was Mia Collins, 9 years old, with a much higher, 3rd-tier aptitude. The instructor added that something had gone wrong with the gauntlet today, that its intensity had spiked unexpectedly. He stated that if Julian hadn't arrived when he did, the little girl would surely have perished. The Academy's intake happened only once a decade, and it wasn't guaranteed they would find suitable candidates each time. While a 3rd-tier aptitude wasn't as rare as a 1st or 2nd, it was still a mark of significant potential, more than enough to warrant entry into the Academy. Julian listened, his expression unreadable. He glanced coolly at the boy and girl before turning his head. He explained that he was simply returning to the Academy and happened to be passing by. He advised them to conduct a thorough review of the gauntlet systems to ensure no further errors occurred. His voice was like music, a low and resonant melody that was both calming and commanding. The 3 instructors immediately confirmed they would comply. A moment later, Julian Sterling was gone, vanishing as quickly as he had appeared. With his departure, the oppressive, awe-inspiring aura lifted, and the world seemed to return to normal. Mia Collins swallowed hard, tugging on Caleb Thorne's sleeve. She whispered cautiously, asking if that beautiful lady was one of the Academy's conduits. She wondered if they were all that beautiful. Caleb's face was a mask of cold fury, and he offered no reply. The girl, oblivious to his dark mood, continued her excited chatter. She insisted they had to get into the Academy now. That beautiful lady had saved them, and they needed to thank her. Caleb finally spoke, his tone chillingly flat, telling her it was time to go. Mia gasped, saying that he was gripping her arm too tightly, that he was hurting her. Caleb slowly released his hold. He looked down at the small girl beside him for a long moment, then turned and stalked forward without another word. She was bewildered by his behavior, muttering to herself, wondering if Caleb was feeling all right again before hurrying to catch up. No, nothing was right. The little girl would never know that her life was supposed to have ended on that path, a sacrifice to block the lightning meant for her beloved Caleb. A malfunction in the gauntlet had dramatically increased the danger. Caleb Thorne, a boy of ordinary potential, was meant to be nearly killed, only to be saved by the selfless act of his childhood friend, Mia Collins. Mia was supposed to die. Caleb was supposed to cradle her body. His anguished screams impressing the Academy's observers, who would then decide to accept the tragically bereaved, average potential boy into their ranks out of sympathy and admiration for his bond. That was the plot at the beginning of Ether's Chosen. 3 years ago, Caleb Thorne had been someone else entirely. A freak accident had thrown him into the world of his favorite fantasy novel. When he realized he had become Caleb Thorne, the protagonist of Ether's Chosen, he was ecstatic. Caleb Thorne, the main character, blessed with invincible plot armor. He was practically a demigod in the making. For 3 years, he had meticulously followed the story he remembered, bringing his neighbor, Mia Collins, to participate in the Argent Academy's trials. He had long since made peace with sacrificing the little girl to secure his own glorious future. But now everything was wrong. What had happened? Why did Julian Sterling appear now? He wasn't supposed to be here. At that very moment, the white-clad conduit, mistaken for a beautiful lady, had passed through the Academy's main gates and was ascending toward his private residence. Instructors and students alike greeted him with warmth and reverence. He responded to each one with a gentle nod and a placid smile, his exquisite face glowing like a flower in the morning sun. But the moment Julian Sterling stepped into his residence at the Ethel Spire, he waved a hand, and the heavy door slammed shut with a resounding boom. The smile on his face vanished as if it had never been there. Julian's eyes, now cold as ice, locked onto a desk across the room. He narrowed his gaze, and with a flick of his wrist, a thick, leather-bound book flew into his hand. Emblazoned on the cover in powerful, embossed letters were 2 words: Ether's Chosen. Julian Sterling, first disciple of the Ethel Spire, prodigy and chosen successor to the most powerful conduit in the world. According to this book, he was fated to be consumed by jealousy of his junior, Caleb Thorne, betray the Academy, and become a monster. Years later, he would be hunted down by Caleb and his allies, and after a battle lasting 10 days and 10 nights, he would die at Caleb Thorne's hand. A just and satisfying end for a villain. But now, Julian let out a short, humorless laugh. He raised the book, his indifferent eyes fixed on the golden title. I, Julian Sterling, am back. A day later, a junior instructor came to inform Julian that the error in the gauntlet was indeed an accident. The Argent Academy's recruitment drive was a massive undertaking. The elders of the institution couldn't be bothered with such affairs, so they were delegated to the top disciples of the younger generation. Julian had overseen the trials 10 years ago. This time, he had been away on a mission, so the responsibility had fallen to Veronica Croft, the third-ranked senior disciple. However, with the gauntlet incident, Veronica had taken full responsibility for the oversight and was now serving a month of penance on Reflection Ridge. The task of hosting the final placement trials now fell to Julian. He received a long-distance communique from Veronica. In it, she acknowledged her mistake and explained that the headmaster wished for him to take over the trials. She had added, with her typical lack of tact, that of all the senior disciples, his duties at Ethel Spire were the least demanding. Julian couldn't help but feel a flicker of amusement, asking for a favor while simultaneously insulting him. It seemed Veronica Croft was the same as she had been in his past life. Brilliant in her practice, but hopelessly inept with people. Julian accepted without hesitation. In his previous life, he had also overseen these very same trials. He had watched, baffled, as the boy with no discernible talent seemed to be blessed by fate itself. In just 10 days, his abilities had skyrocketed, and he ultimately secured the second-place position in the trials, earning him a direct placement into the prestigious Ethel Spire as its second disciple. 3 days ago, Julian had woken up in a dead zone, a wasteland warped by uncontrolled energy, surrounded by the crystalline husks of hundreds of mutated creatures. Every bone in his body had felt shattered, his head a leaden weight. His white coat was caked with dried, black blood. For a moment, he thought he was in hell. But then he felt the familiar thrum of his own energy moving within him, and with that came a surge of elation, followed by the dawning horror of recognition. This was the feral expanse. Years ago, he had frequented this lawless place, a proving ground where conduits and their dark counterparts, the aberrations, hunted each other without oversight. After waking, Julian had not moved. He had sat there, amidst the carnage, and pieced together the fragments of his previous life. He understood. He had returned 18 years into the past. Caleb Thorne had not yet entered the Argent Academy, had not yet become his junior. This was the very moment, the critical juncture, when Caleb was about to walk through the gates. Realizing this, Julian had immediately set off for the academy, intending to stop Caleb's admission by any means necessary. He had barely risen to his feet when something fell from the sky, a flicker of impossible light that struck him squarely. He had caught the object, a hidden weapon of sorts. He looked down. It was a book. Ether's Chosen? Opening that book had shattered his reality. His entire world was a story, and a terribly written one at that, a power fantasy devoid of logic or restraint. Caleb Thorne would find a priceless artifact when he looked up, and a legendary beast when he looked down. From the moment he entered the academy, he was unstoppable, as if he had stolen all the luck in the universe for himself. Every female character in the book, no matter their initial dislike of him, would eventually fall for him after he inevitably found an opportunity to play the hero and save them. Reading it filled Julian with a cold rage. His elegant features twisted into a snarl. He had dispatched an aberration that tried to ambush him with a single, furious stroke of his energy blade, then flew back to the academy at top speed. The book was incomplete, only detailing the part of the story where Caleb Thorne supplanted him, becoming the beloved hero of the Argent Academy. Julian knew what came after. He had lived it. He was framed, again and again, by Caleb, until in a moment of fury, he had destroyed one of Caleb's bonded creatures. That act had gotten him expelled from the academy. It was a lie, of course. They were both in a pocket dimension seeking a treasure, and Caleb had attacked him first. In the end, it was Julian who was branded the villain. On the journey back from the feral expanse, Julian read Ether's Chosen 12 times. The memory of Caleb's blade piercing his heart was still fresh, a phantom agony he would never allow to become real again. Before arriving at the gauntlet, he had even considered killing Caleb Thorne on the spot. But it was just a fleeting thought. Too many junior instructors and disciples were monitoring the trial. Such a blatant act was impossible. So instead, he had intervened, saving the little girl who was supposed to die so tragically, altering the plot at its very inception. And yet, a junior instructor stood before him now. He told Senior Sterling that this was the list of new disciples for the year, and asked him to look it over. Julian's eyes scanned the dozens of names. When he saw the name Caleb Thorne, the corner of his mouth twitched into a faint, unreadable smile. He looked up at the young instructor, his tone gentle as he asked if he remembered correctly that this Caleb Thorne, the one with no aptitude, had also been admitted. Faced with that impossibly handsome face and serene smile, the instructor swallowed nervously. He explained that although Caleb Thorne's foundation was poor, he had survived the gauntlet. He further clarified that after Senior Sterling had intervened, the gauntlet was shut down early. As a result, all 24 of the remaining trial takers had been granted admission. Julian raised an eyebrow but said nothing more. The junior instructor continued to stare at him with open admiration. As he left Julian's quarters, he promised to return in 3 days to escort him to the placement trials. Julian acknowledged him politely, and once the junior was gone, the smile on his lips evaporated. After a heavy sigh, Julian stood and left the Ethel Spire. He returned half a day later, something new in his possession. 3 days later, the placement trials began on schedule. 24 new disciples stood in the arena below the main platform, their eyes wide with a mixture of curiosity and apprehension. Among them, Mia Collins, with her delicate features, stood out. She was chattering incessantly to the sullen boy beside her, completely unaware of the other students' gazes. Many of them were wondering what was so special about the unremarkable-looking Caleb Thorne that he had captured the attention of such a promising new disciple. Mia asked Caleb if he had finished practicing his forms, confessing that her own control felt a little shaky and she was worried about today. Caleb just nodded distractedly. Seeing his perfunctory response, Mia's face fell. She reminded him that he had said that once they got into the Argent Academy, they could become conduits, and that after that, their parents would be taken care of. But one of the instructors had told her yesterday that they weren't allowed to just go home. Caleb snapped that they would be able to go home eventually. He didn't even spare her a glance as he spoke, which made the little girl feel utterly abandoned. She didn't understand what had happened to her friend. Before the gauntlet, he had always been so protective, so caring. Now he acted like he couldn't stand the sight of her. She had come here with him, for him, and she knew no one else. A wave of loneliness washed over her. Tears welled in her eyes. Then, she looked up and saw the beautiful figure in white on the high platform. Her eyes widened in surprised delight, and she shouted, "It's the Lady Angel! Caleb, look, it's the beautiful lady who saved us." Mia's voice was clear and carried in the quiet arena. The disciples, most of whom had heightened senses, heard her perfectly. Lady Angel? Did that little girl just call Senior Sterling a lady? A ripple of muffled laughter went through the crowd. Some whispered that it was understandable. Senior Sterling was so beautiful, he was the dream of countless girls across the 36 states. One admitted that on their first day, they too had mistaken him for a female senior who favored men's attire. Hearing this, Julian himself paused for a moment. He looked down in surprise at the little girl in the crowd and saw her waving enthusiastically at him, clutching her Caleb's arm. This tiny, skinny girl was calling him a lady? The dark-clad young man at Julian's side chuckled, leaning in to whisper in his ear that the little girl had excellent taste. Julian shot him a sidelong glance, and the young man immediately held up his hands in a gesture of innocent surrender. Julian calmly swept his gaze over the assembled students, and the quiet chatter ceased. He knew, of course, that they were now communicating telepathically. A slight smile touched his lips as he stepped forward to the center of the platform. He produced a white crystal from his pocket. Under the bright morning sun, the tall, handsome young man in the silver-trimmed white coat looked down at the new disciples with a gentle expression. His elegant face seemed to radiate a warmth that was mesmerizing, yet the powerful aura he projected commanded absolute respect. Julian held up the white crystal. He informed them that the placement trials were a serious matter for the 6 spires of the Academy. He warned them that any private telepathic communication would be detected by the dampening crystal in his hand, and anyone caught would have to answer to him personally. He added with a wry smile that he would send them to spend time with their most gentle senior sister Veronica. The young man beside him, Carter Hayes, laughed. He remarked that Julian was being a tyrant, and that if Veronica was gentle, then he was the most faithful man in the world. Julian turned to his junior, his expression serious, and stated that he would be sure to pass that message along to their senior sister. Carter looked horrified, protesting that Senior Sterling was bullying him. Julian simply smiled and said nothing. After these minor diversions, Julian formally announced the commencement of the placement trials. The 24 new disciples competed according to a pre-drawn order, showcasing what they had learned in their first 10 days at the Academy. Winners would advance, and those who showed exceptional talent might even be chosen directly by one of the Spire elders. The Academy only accepted candidates with no prior formal training, so the trials were a fair assessment of raw talent and recent effort. But to the seasoned disciples, watching a competition between novices with barely any power was uninteresting. Most of the female students found their gaze drifting back to the distinguished senior disciple on the high platform. Julian was unperturbed. He toyed with the dampening crystal, a placid smile on his face as he calmly observed the matches. After a long while, It was finally Caleb Thorne's turn to take the stage. The idle motion of Julian's hands ceased. Carter Hayes, beside him, noticed the subtle change. He glanced down at Caleb in the arena and said with a low laugh that it seemed his senior was also interested in this particular boy. Julian raised an eyebrow and asked Carter if he thought Caleb could win. Carter laughed outright. He declared that if that boy won, he would go into native seclusion for a full year. Julian waved a dismissive hand, saying it didn't have to be that dramatic. He would just have to go to Reflection Ridge and keep their senior sister Veronica company. Carter's eyes went wide as he once again accused Julian of bullying him. Julian's lips curved into a soft, relaxed smile. But Carter didn't notice that his senior's gaze never left Caleb Thorne, watching as the ordinary-looking boy walked into the ring with a grim expression, his eyes fixed on his opponent with a complicated, frustrated stare. Julian's smile slowly faded, and a dark light flickered in his clear, bright eyes. Without your little trick, Caleb Thorne, what will you do? By the end of the day, all 24 novices had competed. For the most part, the matches were dull affairs. Only Julian's eyes remained fixed on the plain-faced boy. In his past life, Julian had never understood how such an untalented youth could have dominated the trials and taken second place. Even if the others had no formal training, many came from conduit families and had a background in martial arts that made them far superior to an ordinary boy. But in that life, Caleb alone had reached the first tier of power within 10 days. It was unheard of. Among the 36 states, there were 9 tiers of power, and reaching even the first required either immense talent or a perfect environment. Caleb Thorne, born into poverty, had neither. It was impossible. Now, having read Ether's Chosen, Julian finally understood the reason. What was the book's tagline? Caleb Thorne was the chosen one. He looked up and found elixirs, looked down and found artifacts. According to the novel, Caleb, devastated by the tragic death of his childhood sweetheart, had thrown himself into training. But his talent was so poor that after 8 days, he was still behind those who had trained for one. So, the night before the trials, he had wandered into the woods behind the outer sect dormitories to clear his head, and then he had stepped on a vial, an etheric infusion. It was the most common type of enhancement serum. Some junior alchemist at the academy must have dropped it by accident. But this was Caleb Thorne. Of course, it wasn't a standard infusion. It was a celestial-grade etheric infusion. After consuming it, Caleb had spent a single night undergoing a complete system purge and cellular regeneration, officially breaking through to the first tier of power. A celestial-grade infusion. In the entire Argent Academy, only Master Alara, the head of the Azure Spire, could create such a thing. But why would a master alchemist be brewing a basic, first-level serum? And why would she then take a stroll through the outer sect woods and just happen to drop it for the protagonist to find? Where was the logic? It made no sense at all. So, 3 days ago, Julian had quietly left the Ethel Spire and gone to those same woods. Caleb had found the infusion by taking a single lucky step. Julian had been forced to methodically scan the entire forest, searching for a full night before he finally located the faintly glowing vial. The universe's bias was so blatant it was insulting. Thinking of the celestial-grade etheric infusion now resting safely in his dimensional storage, Julian's lips curled into an indifferent smile. Many of the female disciples in the audience were captivated by the expression, but Julian's attention was fixed solely on the ring. So, without your infusion, you who are still just a mortal, how exactly do you plan to defeat your opponent? Julian's slender, jade-like fingers tapped lightly on the wrought iron table before him. His eyes narrowed, his smile deepening. But down in the ring, Caleb Thorne was so frustrated he wanted to scream. He had read Ether's Chosen 10 times in his former life. He had practically memorized it. He clearly remembered finding the celestial-grade infusion on the 9th day after arriving at the academy. But yesterday, he had walked every inch of those woods all night long. He hadn't found a celestial-grade infusion. He hadn't found a single misplaced blade of grass. Was this frustrating? Yes. Without that infusion, how could he possibly compete against the disciples from established families? He had nothing. The refereeing senior disciple's voice boomed across the arena, announcing the 10th match of the trials. It would be Xander Vance of Northridge, 4th tier aptitude, versus Caleb Thorne of the Dust Plains, aptitude unrated. With that, the senior stepped back, leaving the two boys to face each other.